agora, meus amigos, sem mais delongas, nossa keynote internacional, que é a Georgia Weidman, né? A produção me avisou aqui, na realidade eu esqueci, ela veio num Roadsec também em 2018, além deste evento em Salvador, que o pessoal não para de falar aí no chat. Ela é fundadora e CTO da Sheriva. Georgia Weidman é uma empreendedora em série, pentester, pesquisadora de segurança, palestrante, instrutora, autora, membro do Comitê Nacional de Visitas do Cyberwatch Center, do Conselho da Crybury e professora adjunta da UMUC e da Universidade de Tulane. Ela apresentou treinamentos em todo o mundo e é regularmente apresentada internacionalmente na mídia impressa e na televisão. E, claro, escreveu o livro Teste de Penetração, uma introdução prática ao hacking. Tenho certeza que foi o primeiro livro de muitos de vocês, um dos maiores best-sellers da história do mercado de segurança da informação. Ela fundou a empresa de consultoria de segurança Bulb Security e recebeu uma concessão da DARPA Cyber Fast Track por seu trabalho em segurança de dispositivos móveis, culminando no lançamento do Smartphone Pentest Framework. O título da palestra dela é Security in the New Reality. Eu vou pedir para vocês colocarem a Georgia Weidman no ar. Vocês sabem, né, que aqui no evento virtual a gente não consegue fazer ainda tradução simultânea. A palestra da Georgia vai ser em inglês. Para você que não consegue acompanhar, eu queria deixar a dica para você se esforçar, viu? Se esforça que uma hora, estuda e se esforça que uma hora você entende. Depois, não deixem de acompanhar, porque quando a gente posta os vídeos no YouTube, a gente posta eles legendados, então você pode voltar lá no YouTube e acompanhar o seu aprendizado, mas uma dica importante do titio Anderson neste momento de pandemia, hein? Se você teve algum problema, duvido, né, que você profissional de TI bem qualificado está com problema para arrumar emprego nesse momento. Mas se você tiver, se você fala português, onde que você vai trabalhar? Agora, se você conseguir se comunicar em inglês, vivendo no home office na pandemia, pensa bem, você consegue arrumar emprego no mundo inteiro, então fica a dica, vamos sempre trazer conteúdo internacional aqui, não só para trazer uma perspectiva de outros países a respeito da segurança de informação, mas que vocês parem de preguiça e sigam estudando. Não dá para ser profissional de TI sem um mínimo conhecimento de inglês, né, minha gente? Sei que é difícil, mas a internet está aí, Google Translate está aí, RPG, coloca tudo em inglês, vai estudando. Georgia, I hope you didn't understand a single thing that I said.
I think you said that I speak English, but that's about it.
Yeah, no, the thing is, I was explaining to everybody that we won't have simultaneous translation for your live presentation, but when the presentation is available next week on YouTube, they'll be able to follow it with subtitles, but I asked them to try harder and keep studying because it's always important to speak a second language, right? Georgia, I'd like to thank you a lot for being here. It's an honor. We've been thinking about your name since the very beginning, the very first event we did. Now, every single week, we have an audience that is average or above average of the events we've been running throughout Brazil, and then you had the opportunity to be in Salvador. It was in 2017?
18, but yeah.
18, yeah. So, and but although the world has gone crazy, at least in Roadsec terms, we are happy to be able to reach even a broader audience and be able to share even more content that we've ever been done before. And it was great to have you here with us.
This is a girls only.
Yeah, this is a girls only session. I wasn't supposed to be here at all, so I'm just leaving. Ladies and gentlemen, vou pedir uma salva de palmas virtuais. Georgia Weidman no Roadsec, é ao vivo, é de graça, é toda quarta-feira. Vamos recepcionar a nossa palestrante internacional com muita bagunça no chat, gente. Até mais.
Hi, everybody. It's Georgia. I'm going to try to speak slowly and not use any gigantic words so that, one, you might be able to understand me now if you have, pretty good English, which when I was down there in Brazil, I was surprised that a lot of you guys had better English than I do. Well, not really surprised, but you know what I mean. So anyway, and hopefully the translator will be able to pick it up in Google. Anyway, hi. If you don't know me, I wrote this. Let's get it actually in front of the camera. Wait, there we go. But that's the English version, and I actually have the Portuguese version here. It's actually my favorite version. Testes de Invasão. If you do speak English, you might know why that's so funny, because the word testes is actually a really funny word. Kind of bathroom humor, I guess. So anyway, yeah, I wrote the penetration testing book. I'm currently working on the second edition. No, I don't know when it will be out. There's a lot of factors that go into that, like, printing and editors and booksellers and things like that. So I couldn't begin to tell you, especially with, the world going crazy, so to speak. Well, I'm glad to be back. I did Salvador and the main event in Sao Paulo 2 years ago. I was hoping I could come back for real this year, but that doesn't look like that's happening. It doesn't look like I'm going anywhere except here in my house. So without further ado, I'm going to talk a little bit about security in the world we have now, which obviously this talk hasn't existed for very long. So forgive me if it's a little raw, but, I thought we should maybe talk about like what it means going forward for us as, individuals who want to be secure, as people who are undoubtedly going to be asked by our friends and loved ones what they should do about security, as well as, as security professionals moving forward after this. So, if you've ever seen one of my presentations, my slides are not very attractive, but hopefully the content will make up for it. So here we go. Let's share that screen. Moment of truth. Share screen. Yes. And I want the actual application, and I want to share it. Let's hope it's actually working. Yeah, okay, it looks like it is. Okay. That's actually the last slide. I actually want to go to the first slide. So, as usual, I apologize for not using the template. I really need to just learn how to put templates into my slides. But this time I actually have an excuse that I got it yesterday. So imagine that there's the really pretty Roadsec flip side slide here instead of just the white. I can't see my clock, so let me grab my phone, just so I know how I'm doing on time. All right, so security post-COVID-19, security post-pandemic, security in the middle of a pandemic, security what we're gonna have to do going forward. And again, this is obviously just my take on it. I could be completely wrong. I often am, but this is kind of from what I've seen and the people I've talked to and the work I've done, which has been in mobility for a long time. This is kind of my thoughts on things, if you will. So up until as long as 2 months ago, a lot of the IT people, the security people, anybody who even knew what a network diagram was, a lot of them in a lot of organizations had a diagram kind of like this. This one in particular, since it has the light blue boxes, I assume was originally at some point Cisco's, because they always do blue boxes. But anyway, so, I mean, obviously, the computer itself is flat, so it's obviously a flat image, but they also kind of thought of it as a flat network, where the idea being that, one, you control all the assets inside your organization. You are domain admin, you're admin on the firewall, You can log into all the machines. You're in charge of their security posture and everything like that. And when I say you, I mean like IT and security. And on top of that, the other assumption is that you can see all the traffic that's going in and out of your network. And thus, since everything in your network has to go through your network perimeter, either in or out, you can see all of the traffic entering and exiting your enterprise. Those are absolutely two really great things to have if your job is to secure any sort of network, being able to understand what you've got on the network, because a lot of the people I work with, unfortunately, have no idea what's on their network. There's stuff that they inherited, and they don't even have a diagram like this. Like, there's some stuff that the IT person like 3 iterations ago set up, and it still kind of works, so I'm afraid to touch it, kind of thing. But ideally, we have control of all the systems and we have control of the traffic. And that's great. That's a great start to security. But I've been saying for a really long time now, seems like an incredibly long time, that that's not really what we're working with anymore. Our life is a lot more like this. We're traveling. Obviously, we're not traveling right now, but you can think of suddenly being in our homes. For people who didn't work from home all the time, like a lot of us did before the pandemic, the laptop going home or the desktop going home and being part of that network is the equivalent of traveling, because as an IT person, like, who knows what's on the home networks of all your employees? Who knows what sort of madness is going on? No idea. We're using certainly more cloud services than ever here in the pandemic. I mean, a lot of us were already using cloud services a lot. I mean, even if you don't think you are, unless you're running your own email server, you're using, Google or Microsoft or whatever, you're using somebody's cloud service there. I don't know of anybody who's not using any cloud services. So, we have that risk. That's where this breaks down, is that on these home networks, or once we're able to travel again at the client sites, in the coffee shops, on the airplane, assuming we ever fly again, assuming air travel is a thing going forward and all the airlines don't bankrupt, which, they could, I guess. We're not going to have control. And like I said, we haven't for a really long time, but we've lived under this kind of guise that we thought we did. But we have really no control over what our work devices with our work information and our access to the work network, what they're going to come in contact with in terms of potentially malicious stuff. Like I said, the cat's been out of the bag on that one for a while, but at this point, we really can't deny it anymore. The time of mobility and cloud and Internet of Things is here and now. I think it's going to be very difficult to get even, people who are like really sociable to want to go into brave the traffic or brave the train and go into work from 9 to 5 every day after this is over. So, this is here and now, and we as security are going to have to deal with it. We should have dealt with it a long time ago, since we've had mobile phones in the workplace for over 10 years now. We've been using cloud services for even longer. So we really should have figured out how to go from protecting this to protecting this, but, better late than never. And what better time than when, I see a lot of people's security budgets are getting slashed. I mean, people have less income across a lot of different industries. Security's always kind of been seen as like a vanity item. It's just a line item that spends money. So, it's often one of the first things that is losing budget now. So we need security more than ever, and we likely have less budget than ever to do it with, but have faith, because I do believe we can pull it off. So the threats of, and when I say mobile, think mobility, IoT, cloud, any of the ways that we work now. It says mobile, but it means everything. So really you can think of it like a traditional computer. So a traditional computer, it might get attacked like remote code execution, like it might not have a patch, or it is subject to a 0-day and somebody really hates you and wants to burn their 0-day on you. So I kind of think of those as like no hands, because the user doesn't have to do anything. Just the presence of the device on the network is enough for it to be taken over. This can happen still today. I mean, we've seen it happen with like Windows computers occasionally, not as much as it used to, luckily. Same sort of deal with, our mobile devices. We're usually, it looks like these days, seeing it through things like the Bluetooth chip or the Wi-Fi chip, or some other chip in the device having remote code execution. But it happens. More likely, we see a lot more of client-side attacks where the user has to like click on a link and through phishing, and then it exploits their browser, and then it exploits their machine. We see a lot more of that both in the traditional computing and in the mobile side. People get like a text message and they click on a link and it takes them somewhere nasty, or it has them install a malicious application that spies on them, or otherwise like steals stuff. So again, it's very equivalent. Certainly, I just mentioned phishing. Phishing is a big problem in, our traditional computers with our email. We haven't figured out what links we should click and what links we should not. And perhaps as a society, we never will solve that problem. But in the mobility space, you've got way more options of ways that you can deliver links. It's not just sending people emails. People don't just need to know, don't click on scary links in emails. Don't click on scary links in text messages. Don't click on scary links in WhatsApp. So Facebook Messenger, this thing here, if it has a chat function, don't click on scary stuff. But what's scary stuff and what's not is, the question of the ages, if you will. So our threat model with mobility and cloud and all that is not that different. Cloud, that's just some computers that is somebody else's job to secure somewhere on the internet. They're running Linux or Windows or something like that. And, they may be patching, they may be using, good security hygiene in general, or they may not. And we, as the people in charge of keeping our enterprise secure, by choosing to use any cloud service, or by allowing our users to, have their other cloud services, their personal cloud services, like, Facebook, on their work machines or on the work phones, we are taking it out of our hands, the security of all that, because we don't control it. Somebody else does. And it's up to them to decide, whether it's going to be secure or not. So we've gotten really far away from this. We don't control the devices because often they belong to the user, and we don't control any of the back-end stuff anymore either, because that's all in the cloud, somebody else's cloud service. So, if you've seen some of my talks before, it's just like, wow, this is like the same stuff she's been harping on for forever, but now it's like, nobody can deny that I'm right now. They should give prizes for being right. So, more on that, just the ecosystem. You think of just like, okay, you've got an employee and they've got a laptop and they've got a phone, and both of those have like a VPN connection back into the office. They have access to work files. They get their work email on there. So, it's just in terms of, what sort of damage it could do to the enterprise if it was compromised. It's, it's up there. It has access to both information and the network. So a compromise would be bad. So, it's like, okay, let's put this in a box. It's an iPhone or it's an Android. Let's make sure it's up to date. The apps on it are not malicious, and the user doesn't lose it or something like that. And none of those are easy problems to solve by any means, because what is and is not a malicious app is something we have not been able to define yet at all. You'll see, plenty of discussion back and forth whenever like one of those apps that are, spying on you, it comes out in the news that, big app XYZ is actually spyware because they have like Google Analytics or are hooked up to Facebook ads or something. And the question of is that or is that not malicious is, if you look at the comments, we have not decided yet what the line is for malicious. Certainly, keeping devices up to date is not as easy as one might think, though. It could be. We have the ability to see what version it is. We should just shut off its access if it's not up to date. But people complain when you just shut off their access randomly. Okay, so we've secured the device, let's pretend, but the device comes with all this extra stuff. It basically comes with a cloud of its very own that, again, your enterprise has no control over the security of it whatsoever. It comes with an app store. It gets security updates. They have to get pushed out from some server somewhere. It's probably doing cloud backups by default. So those are going to, again, some server somewhere that may or may not have vulnerabilities. It'll probably have its own email, it'll have Apple Mail or Google Mail or whatever. It'll have, the apps that came with it, as well as the apps that the user installs. And again, that's all stuff that the security thereof we do not control. We do not control the, the cellular carriers, the people who make Bluetooth chips, things like that. We have no control over it whatsoever. And no matter how much you secure your device, or your users use good security hygiene, if, say, for instance, the people who make the iPhone, they use a bad password or they get phished or whatever, as people do, these things happen. And, the security update server of the phone gets compromised. There is nothing you can do at that point. The phone is programmed to believe that security updates come from that server. They're signed with the key that's on that server that the attacker now has. So the phone will accept the malicious update, and completely out of your hands again. Real scary stuff that, our next gen firewall that's currently sitting in our office, while nobody's there, and is keeping the malicious traffic out of the office. It can't really do anything about stuff like this. So obviously we're going to have to reevaluate our security spend. I mentioned phishing. I just want to harp on that a little bit more, especially now. There are a lot of phishing attacks going around about COVID-19, whenever there's a disaster or something like that, the phishing emails and whatnot do tend to pick up around that topic. That's not anything new, but what might be a bit new for some organizations that were not as into bring your own device or working from home as some of their employees might like is that, now they are in that space where, people are at home but connected. People are on their own devices and they have work information on there as well as a connection to work. So, them being phished on their personal stuff it matters a little bit more to the enterprise, if it didn't before, which again, for a lot of us, for people like me who worked from home anyway, my life hasn't changed very much. I've always, I own the company, so, I bought the device. It's both mine and the company's, but, I use the devices. I work from home. My life's about the same. So my risk profile has not changed very much, but I'm the extreme case. So for most people, their risk profile has changed. So, but social engineering, really important. Phishing is, if you look at the attacks that are successful, most of it has some social engineering component, even if it's scary, super 0-day stuff. I always hark back to the Trident attack against iOS, and that had not one, not two, but 3 iOS 0-day exploits in it. But in order for it to start running that exploit chain, it needed to get into the browser. So first, the attackers would send a text message with a link in it, and the user clicking on the link was the difference between, that exploit chain working or not. And that's actually how they got caught, was that someone had in fact taken really awesome security training and recognized that, it might be a phishing link and turned it in. But we usually don't get nation state level security awareness training, on average. So definitely, our users, our friends and family, ourselves, if we need a reminder, because I know I always do, we need to be vigilant about what we're clicking on. And, I've said it already in this presentation, and I'll say it again 1,000 times in my life. People are like, but links are meant to be clicked. That's literally their job, is to be clicked on. That's why there's a link. So how do you make the distinction? And I think everybody's truthful answer is, if what's on the other side of the link is something you really want or think you really want, no amount of security training is going to stop you from clicking on it. So certainly dealing with the results of a successful phishing campaign against members of your enterprise is going to be something you will be dealing with into the end of your career, I'm sure. But, we do need to make sure everybody knows it's not just email. I think, we've done really well. Well, I wouldn't say really well, but we've done pretty adequately at getting it into a lot of people's heads, malicious links in emails. Be careful what you click on. But like I said previously, and I'm going to say it again because it's really important, any way you can get a link. Like on this slide, it has a QR code. Somebody scans that, that's a link. Near field communication tags, that's a link. Even things like WhatsApp or Telegram that are, I think, give people a certain false sense of security because, they're supposed to be secure. So you kind of assume the app takes care of that. But if you click on a link in WhatsApp and it opens in your browser and it's malicious, or it asks you to download an app and you do, it's just as bad as anywhere else. So definitely social engineering is big, bad, and better than ever. All right, I have about 10 minutes. Good. All right, so this is a slide I obviously just added by the fact that it's even uglier than the rest. But, people are always asking me, like, as a layman, as a non-security person, what can they do to secure themselves? And, these are my big three. I mean, I'm sure anybody who works in security, you get the same things. Everybody's asking you, what do you do about security? And my answers have not changed, actually, in the post-COVID world. Well, it's not post-COVID yet, but it's all the same as it was before. It's just slightly different now in terms of everybody's at home, everybody's on their own devices. But, social engineering, are there two E's like that? I may have spelled that wrong. I apologize for not being able to spell. It's a problem. He was saying it's always good to learn a second language. And I'm over here like, God, I barely speak my first language properly. Yikes. But on top of social engineering, passwords, very important. And patching. So passwords, let's be honest, doing passwords perfectly, there's not a way to do passwords perfectly, like as a human. They tell you never reuse passwords, even though you've got like 50 million cloud services and counting. So never reuse passwords. They can't be based on a dictionary word. They have to have a lot of complexity. They have to be long. So, but you can't write them down. You can't put them in a text file or anything. So, enter the password managers. But, what if you then want to like use your credit card on your phone and then you have to get out your laptop because you have to open the password manager to decrypt it? And, like people have found vulnerabilities in password managers as they do. I'm definitely not saying don't use password managers. Absolutely. Using a password manager is at this point better than not using one, but I'm just acknowledging that from a user standpoint, password managers are not perfect yet. And I can see why people are just like writing down on a text file or using the same password everywhere is a lot easier. And, moving away from that. But, this is very, very important right now, especially. But I mean, like I said, all this stuff is always important, but is especially important, as the world evolves into one where we are even more dependent on our tech. And of course, patching, keeping our devices up to date. When we were looking at, more of this model, even if somebody had their phone on the network and they controlled it and it wasn't up to date, at least everything else around it, we had, some hope of keeping it up to date. Now, since everybody's, in their own home, I would probably not want to see what the vulnerability report of my home network says, since I have a lot of vulnerable by design devices on it, but who knows what all your employees are doing. So again, these are just the same things as always. Social engineering, passwords, patching. Is that going to stop you from being compromised like 100% of the time? Absolutely not. But for most of us, unless you're, a big corporation or a high net worth individual or a celebrity or just somebody really, really has it out for you, most of the attacks you're going to run into are people who are trying to make their botnet bigger or something like that. So they don't really care who they get. They just want to get as many people as possible. So, we have this saying in the US, I don't know if you have something similar, that you don't actually have to outrun the bear, you just have to outrun the guy next to you. So while your security is not going to be perfect just because of these three things, it will unfortunately put you above, most of your peers. So, if it's just somebody trying to build their botnet, they're likely to just move on and, get the other 99 people who, did not patch. So what are we going to do? So obviously, the firewall at the perimeter of the work network is not going to solve our problem now. It's not seeing pretty much any of the traffic that our devices that we use for work are currently, sending and receiving. Maybe if we're VPN'd in, certain traffic might be going through it. But generally speaking, right now, all of that stuff that we had on our work network is not really giving us the protection we need. It hasn't really for a long time, but it definitely really isn't now. So this is all stuff from like my old mobile talk, but things that we've done. We've tried to do things like device management, it says mobile device management, but I mean, you can manage people's laptops, but I mean, laptops are going to become tablets in the next couple rounds anyway. So, I mean, I kind of think of them all as the same thing and think of them more in terms of risk profile. Like the laptop at home and the phone at home have a lot closer to like the same risk profile than, my phone at home and then like the phone that the NSA makes for, top secret stuff that's got a lot of the stuff taken out of it and what's not. Those are both phones, but my phone and laptop have a lot closer of a security like risk profile. So, putting device management stuff on it that's like, you must update or you can't install this app or you can only use work stuff on these apps. And they changed the name somewhere in there to Enterprise Mobility Management, which was, you guys probably have something like this now in your enterprise. It may be the only thing that's holding your workforce together at this point because you suddenly went mobile almost entirely overnight without a lot of planning for a lot of people. So that, again, is going to be, some security and, application management that'll set up your SharePoints and VPNs and whatnot. It'll have, again, like a separate set of apps that you can use for work. So, your work stuff isn't commingling with your personal stuff. I talked about this at RSA this past year. Well, I guess it was only a few months ago, that, this is not a new thing, but, every time somebody brings it up, it's all exciting that, any of this stuff, we were particularly in this case talking about multi-factor authentication apps, but, on any of these devices, if you get below the application layer, if you get like to root level, ring 0, or, whatever you want to call it, you become the super user, you are able to, see the memory space of these apps, see anything that they've stored on the file system, including like any like decryption keys. So, I think absolutely these sorts of things, enterprise mobility management, mobile application management, they're absolutely good things. We're certainly glad that we have them right now because, if we didn't, it would be a lot harder to pull off this productivity at home thing. But honestly, they're just not enough at this point in terms of, to be able to bridge that security gap to suddenly make everybody's home and everywhere they'll go after, they're finally let outside be, a secure enough place to be able to do work. So we definitely, I think we kind of go in cycles in terms of, network protection versus like endpoint protection, and endpoint protection has not been in vogue as much as perhaps it should be. Yes, there is the argument that any endpoint protection applications, again, if you get below, the application layer, then you can, again, bypass them. There's always going to be people bypassing security solutions. That's just the nature of the beast. Sophisticated attackers will not even, fire off any packets before they've made sure that their attack gets past all the protections that they know their specialized target has. So, there's always going to be people getting by it, but I think having, a really strong endpoint protection, on the devices, and, I'm talking, and yes, I'm basically talking antivirus here, but obviously I'm talking like next gen antivirus, because antivirus, it gets a really bad rap, but antivirus, it was never supposed to find like 0 days and things like that. So it gets a lot of like flack that like, oh, the like 0 day attack or the complicated malware, it turned off my antivirus, it didn't find it. But what antivirus does do very well and has for a very long time is, like if somebody unsophisticated with security, like downloads something off a torrent and it has, a basic like piece of malware that, again, it's somebody trying to build up their botnet. It's not nation state level. It's just like get as many people as possible kind of deal. Antivirus does a really good job of finding that and helping you clean it up. So, like I said, it gets a lot of flack, but it in fact does its job very well. Obviously, that job is not nearly enough for endpoint protection, though it is a start. But going from there, and, we have seen in the last couple of years at least, which is, again, really good for us going forward. We have seen, some really good movement forward in the, mobile threat defense is the Gartner Magic Quadrant of it. So there has been some good movement in that area. There's a picture of endpoint protection. So I definitely think endpoint protection is where we need to put our money. And good endpoint protection, not just buying whatever it says on the back of the box. We saw it with Zoom. It said it had end-to-end encryption. I'm going to put that on the security community because we are not very clear. We are not good. As a whole, security is very bad at, making ourselves understood by anyone other than security experts. So I will give it to the security community that Zoom people probably had no idea that, what they were doing was not technically the definition of end-to-end encryption, because have you read those specs? So I'm not even going to say that Zoom even knew that they were wrong. Probably. I could be totally wrong. I've never talked to anybody at Zoom about it, but my guess would be they thought they were doing everything they were supposed to security-wise, and we just make it so incredibly hard to do that. Pen testing is always important. We're gonna have to monitor the state of these devices. We're going to have to. We're just going to have to. I have for years been doing penetration tests where, I break into the desktops and I break into the servers and I break into the web apps and I break into, I social engineer people through email. But as a mobile researcher and somebody who builds mobile pen testing products, I talk to all my clients about, we should be dealing with the bring your own device. We should be looking at the mobile devices. And it's like, oh, those are people's own devices. We can't test that. We can't monitor that. No way. That's a privacy issue. I'm sorry, but the day that your entire workforce started working from home with almost no warning, that ceased to be true basically the security world needs to declare martial law and say, if you're going to work here, if your devices are going to be, connecting to our network, downloading important, sensitive information to your phone or laptop, they're going to get tested. And they're going to get tested while they're on your home network. Your entire home network might get tested. Your kid's stuff might actually run into a Nessa scan. So, I'm kind of a vigilante about, we really need to be doing testing because attackers don't stay within, the rules of engagement just because you don't think you can test people's own devices for work. The attacker does not feel that way. They're very happy to attack the user's iPhone and use that as a jumping off point to get into your super secret servers that are probably in the cloud now. Anyway, and we need to do this constantly because people's networks certainly change a lot more than that blue one. Think about, how often you change things that are on your home network. You add something new, somebody comes over and visits. Well, not right now, but eventually. So, I guess my key takeaways from this are we're not going back. We're not going to be able to put this back in the box. Mobility is here and now. People using their own devices is here and now. It has been for a long time, but now it's really here. And the only thing I think that stands a chance is, and I realize we're slashing security budgets big time, but for a long time, it seems to me that we've had really big security budgets and we've just kind of gone down the rows at RSA and bought and I'm going to buy that, and I'm going to buy that, and I'm going to buy that. So in a way, this is kind of good because now people are going to have to be okay, I only have so much money. What are the things I really need to protect my organization, how it is now, not how it was before COVID-19, but how it is now, how it will be going forward. What technologies, what testing do I actually need instead of I'll just buy everything and hope it works, which has unfortunately been the solution for a lot of businesses with security budget for a long time. So that's my little rant about life. Pull this down. I think I went over by just a couple minutes, for which I apologize. And yeah, thank you guys for your time. I've actually in the chat, it actually says my time is over, but I couldn't see the chat while I had my slides up. So I apologize for being a couple minutes over. Thank you guys. I'm going to go back to working on the next edition of the book for you.